Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, and this is a video tutorial on creating a CSS button. Now we're going to be styling a link, so an anchor tag, and we're just going to be applying a class to an anchor tag. So essentially all we're styling is a link that you'd usually use on a website. So there's nothing difficult here about the markup. There's no additional divs or span tags or anything like that. We're just essentially going to be creating this button here with this hover over effect using pure CSS. We're not going to be adding any other elements. We're just having our link tag or our A tag. This is the button, how it looks like. I've added some text just up here just to see how it nests itself or looks on the page. And you can see it's just a plain button. We've got a slight border radius, we've got a border, the text inside quite bold and easy to read, and we've also got this hover effect as well. Now obviously by all means when we've completed the tutorial, this can be styled differently, and it's relatively easy to style differently, but we're going to be taking you through some of the technical challenges that you might face when creating a button like this just using an A tag. Now just quickly, the benefit of styling a tag such as an anchor tag is that it's easier for, it's more semantically correct, easier for screen readers to read. This text here has come directly from the contents of the anchor tag, so it would mean that a screen reader for someone that was visually impaired would really easily be able to pick this up. Their screen reader software would really easily be able to pick this up, and that's really important that we create our markup as cleanly and as accessible as possible. So now that you've seen the end result, let's go ahead over to our blank text editor and let's start styling this button up. Okay, so we're over to our text editor. As I said, we've just got a blank document here. There's nothing in the body, and we've linked our primary.css style sheet to our page so we can start applying the styles for the button in there. As you saw just a moment ago, we had some markup on the page. So we had a paragraph saying don't have an account with a question mark, and then we had the button itself. So I'm going to be creating the markup first, and then that's all we're going to have. We're not going to change the markup at all. As I said, it's just going to be an anchor tag. So let's go ahead and create a paragraph, and I'm just going to say don't have an account. So something you might usually find associated around a button. Now let's go ahead and create the anchor tag. So just as you'd normally create a link, so just pop a hash in there because we don't need that. I'm going to create, I'm going to add the text sign up now, as you saw previously. Now the only thing we need to do is give this a class, so I'm going to give this a class of button. So the beauty of this is if you had other elements or other buttons on the page, for example exit, you could still give it the class button and it would take on the same style. So it's extremely easy when you're writing your markup to say, well, I'll pop this link in here, give it a class of button, and it will look like all the other buttons on my site. If I need to go back to these styles and change the appearance of the button, all of the buttons will be updated. And because there's no markup around this, no div tags around this or anything like that, it makes it a lot easier to implement on your page. Okay, so it's over to our style sheet. Let's just check out what this looks like at the moment. Well, it looks like that. It's pretty bland. You've just got the text as it would normally sit on a page with the default colors, no button styling around it at all. So now we're going to learn how to style a pure A tag and make it into a button. So we obviously need to address our button class, or select our button class, and we're only going to be selecting two things. It's the button class and the hover state as well. The hover state's easy, so we'll spend our time looking at the button class itself. Now the first thing I want to go ahead and do is set a background, and we'll just look at how the element is styled. So let's go ahead and set a background first. I'm going to set a background of ED. That will give it a nice light grey effect, but easy enough to see. So when I refresh, you can see that the background has slightly changed colour. It might not be too noticeable at the moment, but once we've got the border in there and everything, it will be. So what's the problem with this? Well, we need to give this some padding. So the we give it some padding, but we also need to make sure that the button sort of comes out a bit, and we can do things with it. So what do we need to do? Well, let's go ahead and give it some padding, and let's see the effect that that has on it. So I'm going to give it a padding of 5px and then 15px. Now the reason I've done this is because the top and the bottom will be applied, well, will have applied 5 pixels of padding, and the left and right will have 15 pixels applied. So when I refresh, you can now see that we've got the edge of the the edge of the button coloured. So we've got, you know, the space here, the space at the top, the space at the bottom. So we basically achieved what we already have as a button. Now you can see the only difference is that even though I'm not hovering over the text, I'm hovering over the outside of the text here, it's still part of the A tag. So we've applied the padding directly to this anchor tag, and therefore we can click the entire contents of here. We don't just need to hover over the text. So that's where it comes in really handy, you know, adding this padding in. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and set a border. We'll just wrap this up quickly, and then we'll, you know, make changes to the text itself. Let's go ahead and create a border. We're going to create a border of 1 pixel. It's going to be a solid border, and I'm choosing DC, 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 which is a slightly darker color, which will just nicely contain that. So you can see that we've got that border around the edge now. Now it looks a bit blocky, so we're going to use the border radius property. And I'm using it without vendor prefixes, like for example Moz border radius. But if they are required, then you can use them, you know, the majority of other new CSS properties. So the border radius I'm going to set to 6 pixels. No particular reason why it's 6. It can be 5, 4, 3, whatever. It just depends on how rounded you want your borders. So I'm going to go ahead and click refresh. You can see that then borders have become slightly more round. Now this is interesting because this new CSS property, border radius, is something that would only have before been able to be achieved using Photoshop, you know, placing an image on the background. You wouldn't have been able, or you know, or some clever other tricks, but it would, you know, now we've just filtered this down to using one property to set the border radius. So now what we want to do is address the text within, because the text at the moment is looking pretty default and boring. So let's go ahead and change the text. So I'm going to set the color of the text first. That's going to be 777, so a sort of grey color. You can see that's now changed. And now we're going to go ahead and remove the underline. So I'm going to use text decoration none. So that will remove the underline, the default underline from the link, and when we hover over it, it still does not underline. Now, what do we want to do about the font and the, you know, the weight of the font and the size? Well, we're going to use the font shorthand property. So I'm just going to be using font, and I'm going to say bold. So we're setting the font weight first. Then we're setting the font size, and I'm going to choose 0.8 EM. So nothing too big, it's just going to be a regular button that we can use on a page. And I'm going to be using the font Arial. I'm not going to provide any backups, but usually you'd use something like sans serif. I mean, we could use that, I suppose. Okay, so now that we've done that, I think we are done. We are indeed. So let's go ahead and refresh the page, and you can see that that's made it bold, 0.8 EM in size, and it's changed the font to Arial. So a nice smooth sans serif font, which you'd expect from a button. Okay, so now that we've done the button itself, we can click on this button and it works. So we've got the entire area of the button to click. But what do we want to do on the hover? Now, remember, because this is an A tag, we don't need to do any, you know, special effects for the hover. We just say button hover. So we use the pseudo class hover, and we can change any properties that we've previously defined here, or add new properties to this link. So all I'm going to be doing is I'll be boring and just set the background to a different color. So I'm going to choose DDD. Now when I refresh, you see that when I hover over, the background of the link changes. Now obviously you can make, you know, something a bit nicer. You might want to change the border. You might want to I don't know, enlarge the text or underline the text even. So, you know, you could even say text decoration underline. And then when you go ahead and refresh, you also got that underline as well. It's entirely up to you, but the point is that we've created a button, and our markup that we've used is just an A tag. So this can actually sit on a line. So you can actually go ahead and place this along with a line of text, but there is one more adjustment we'll need to make if so. So if I was to go ahead and place that after the question mark, Let's go ahead and refresh, and you can see that that's now sitting on the line as it would normal text, and that's because we're using an A tag, which by default is a display inline. So if we go down here, it doesn't give us the property, but it's basically it sits along with the text on a page, so it aligns perfectly. Now the only problem that you might have is because of the padding, we're actually quite near to the question mark here, so we might want to go ahead and choose an additional property here, and we might want to set the margin. So I'm going to set the margin to 0 and then 5 pixels. Now remember, 0 will set the margin on the top and the bottom, and 5 pixels will set the margin on the left and the right. So just like with the padding shorthand property. So when I refresh now, you see that's moved away from the question mark. So we've got a bit more space there. It looks a bit more natural, but we're still floating. Well, not floating, but we're still placing this element on the same line as our text. So apart from being, extremely correct or correctly implemented, we've actually also got something that's extremely versatile. So that's creating a button in CSS.